Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tech Gig webinar on Succeeding in Software Engineering, a Global Career Masterclass. Thank you for joining the session today. I'm Sukriti, the moderator of this session. To learn if you want to succeed as a software engineer. While most people expect to hear a certain programming language, they should master or a soft skill that will aid in team leadership. To me, at least, that's not the case. I think most engineers will agree that knowing a certain programming language is not the one key to being a good developer. Instead, it's the ability to adapt and learn new skills that will get you to the furthest in your career. Today's masterclass focuses on activating and accelerating your career in the global technology world. And to facilitate the conversation, we have with us Cognizant's Global Head of Full Stack Engineering Community, Sandeep Deb. Sandeep will share his own learnings and experience that saw him succeed from a software engineer to head of technology application to banking CTO to global head of full stack digital engineering at Cognizant, where he leads Cognizant's full stack engineering global community of around 10,000 strong digital engineers. Sandeep is fascinated with quantum computing and holds some patents in it too. He will talk about designing and enabling software engineering culture where associates can thrive, develop, and accelerate their careers. I would also like to inform our audience that the session is scheduled for an hour with around 40 to 45 minutes for the presentation and the remaining 15-20 minutes for the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please send them to us using the questions tab on the GoToWebinar control panel. Without any further ado, I will hand over the session to our guest speaker. Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you so much, Sukriti. Am I audible?
Yes, you're loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So first of all, a huge vote of thanks, Sukriti, for letting me have this opportunity to talk to this wonderfully diverse audience. And I know today we have participants across the spectrum. We have some students, we have some early career professionals, we have some of my tenured colleagues. And it's very exciting to be with them and talk about the journey of a software engineer, relating to my journey looking 25 years back. And before I start, and thanks for the introduction, Sukriti, I do want to clarify that I do not stand here, I do not speak here today as a successful professional. I think success is very relative. All of us are successful in our own terms. But I stand here as a passionate engineer. I think I stand here amidst all of you as a proud engineer, and that's the podium that I would want to spend the next couple of minutes from. I have had a fulfilling career, and the career has been extremely satisfying for the last 2.5 decades now. I have traversed many journeys, I have had many experiences, and none of them give me as much pride
Sandeep, we cannot hear you. I guess you've gone on mute.
Is this better, Sukriti? I think it got chipped off sometime.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Sukriti, what was the last you heard?
So it was gone suddenly. Sandeep, you've just started with the introduction slide. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what I was saying is I do not stand here as a successful professional. I think I take pride in standing here today as a passionate engineer, and nothing gives me more pleasure to introduce myself by showing you my last 6 years of open source GitHub contribution. And that is how I intend to speak about my experiences, my journey, and possibly share some tips with you. So with that, moving forward, and if I have to distill my last 25 years of experience as a passionate engineer, and by the way, I'm still very much in love with engineering. I would summarize them in 3 key points, or three strong resonating realizations. The first one is the excitement of the never-ending chase. And after due thought, I chose a Mobius strip to represent what I intended to say. It is never ending, but it is also very cyclic in nature, right? And that's what I have realized the world of software engineering to be. I have been fortunate to see many paradigms, hit our shore, inundate our shore. I have seen client server computing being introduced, the joy of being able to launch an application on the browser. I have been in the thick of desktop development. I have been in the thick of Corba and distributed computing. I have seen it evolve to service-oriented architectures, microservices. I have seen blockchain. I have seen quantum computing. I have seen cloud, uh, and it's exciting. It's something that has led me to the firm realization that it is the excitement of chasing the change that makes life worthwhile for an engineer. For some, it is, I have seen many such instances in my career, but for a vast majority of engineers, this is what keeps the adrenaline flowing. This is what gives the true excitement. Um, but this is also a arduous journey for us engineers. When the world keeps evolving, every day new technologies, new paradigms are getting invented for the good. When we start working on an engagement, our competency landscape freezes. And when we come out of the engagement, I have always had the feeling that I'm stepping into a fresh new world, which takes me some time to recognize. And this is disconcerting. But after that moment of dizziness passes, the excitement sets in because now the next lap of the race begins and I have to catch up to the next one. Um, and it was fatiguing at the very start when I started my career. And that's something that was one of the first things that I learned from my mentor, um, how to deal with the change. And that's the impression that I want to leave with you, that the first and the most important learning that we have to embrace as engineers is learn how to learn fast. And that is exactly what will keep us in love for decades together. Now, there's a very interesting story behind it. And I relate back to almost 20, 22 years back. And we were struggling with a brand new framework, a brand new product, which none of us knew. And that day evening, my mentor kind of picked up a book and he walked away. Next day morning, he comes and he starts coding like a pro. And I was amazed. Um, and I asked, how did you do it? I mean, you must have known this before. He said, no, I didn't know it. Then I said, how can you possibly, master something and learn it overnight? And I believe that led me to the first pivotal learning experience, a career shaping experience. I learned that in software engineering, the concepts rarely change. It is only the manifestation of the concept, the way the concepts are semantically presented and used keeps changing. So if we pin our knowledge, if we pin our experience in strengthening and building the conceptual base, rest all becomes extremely accelerated from a learning standpoint and adaptability standpoint. So that's possibly the first and the most profound realization that I have had in my career. The next one, and this is this is equally profound, and this is one of the reasons why I still get excited. And the fact is, software engineering is such a branch of engineering where the value is disproportionate with the effort and resources that it needs. And the value need not necessarily be confined to the walls of the office or profession. Few years back, and I came home very excited after a uh, brilliant engagement with one of our very key customers. And I was so proud. And I was telling at home that, we did this, we did that. And my son kind of very innocently asked that, if you can do so much, why don't you do something, use software engineering for home, right? It was a very, very innocent question. I don't think he manipulated the question, but the question was profound, and it led me to realize that we wield such a power with our prowess of making computers work, and we so frequently ignore to leverage that power outside the premises of the office in our personal lives, that it's disheartening. There is so much to be done. I mean, till last year, till 2020, I was running SETI at home on my personal computer, trying to contribute to finding aliens. Uh, I have minted Bitcoin in my Raspberry in my attic a couple of years back. Um, I have I have been fortunate to use software to build a full-fledged education platform for my kids, and and I'm truly proud that I was able to not only use it outside office but help it to fulfill and flourish my life more than I could have expected. So that's the second key realization, that the power is absolutely in our hands. The third one, and I did mention about my mentor from my early days, is the importance of a mentor in shaping the career. And the slide is blank because I don't think visuals or text is going to do any justice to the importance of this topic. The only thing that I wanted to highlight was we are professionals. We have had 22, 25 years of arduous education. I don't think we need teachers. I don't think we need trainers in our professional life. What we do need is mentors. And mentors are different. Mentors are very different than coaches, trainers, and teachers. Mentors help you find yourself. Mentors help you understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and they mold you with their own hands to make you conquer your weakness by leveraging your strength. And we we look at at least 3 decades of career, uh, and it's not all smooth. It's not all monotonically increasing. Um, there are ups and downs. I have had ups and downs. You will have ups and downs. And the price of the value of a mentor becomes priceless when we hit the lows in our career, when we are struggling with frustration, when things are not going right. I have always found the presence of a mentor being being the critical factor in not only me coming out of it, but having learned how to deal it in the future. And I'm going to relate one personal experience. Um, like many of the engineers, like most of you, um, I look at things very objectively. We engineers are trained to look at the world in objective manner because 8 hours a day we deal with objectivity. We dream in if else, catch, and finally blocks. Um, but then this also puts us at a serious disadvantage because we don't find it very motivating to deal with ambiguity, and that's possibly the soft underbelly of engineers, right? I struggled with it. I'm sure you you have struggled with it. If not, I'm sure you will struggle with it as engineers. And one day it turned very frustrating, and I talked to my mentor. I said that I don't know what to do with it. I mean, I'm supposed to look at things objectively, but I feel that the world wants me to look at things in a very ambiguous manner, in a very amorphous manner. Um, and I think it was just one line which kind of shaped my entire outlook. Uh, my mentor told me that why don't you learn how to deal with ambiguity in an objective fashion? And and it was phenomenal. I think that opened into our professions. So um, and these are the three. If I distill my experience, my profession, I would leave you with these three realizations, three important things, which I find are the top of the chart in terms of experience. I would conclude it by saying that don't worry too much about the software career. It's there is no mantra to succeed in a software engineering career. Keep following your career with passion. Um, and the career will follow passionately. It has to follow passionately, right? Don't look at it the other way around. Don't expect that you chase a fruitful career. Just be passionate. Just continue doing what you want to do. And the sentence is interesting because it has only one verb: follow. And given the longevity of our career, we cannot afford to be driven by passion alone. Passion needs to be sustained over a long, long period of time. We cannot afford to flash and burn just because we are deeply passionate about one topic or another. This also needs sustained fueling because this becomes our profession. This is what prepares us for our future profession and beyond, right? So it is important. It's not just about passion, but then the key is, how do we follow? What is follow in the context of career, especially for engineers? If I distill and I try to keep it non-pedantic, these are the three things that I think make all the difference. And unfortunately, and if you are surprised, there is no mention of cloud, Angular, quantum, or the esoteric technologies that are lapping at our ankles, right? Um, it's none of them. None of them matter. I have seen enough, and none of them matter to make your career fruitful, enjoyable, and successful and sustainable. What matters is these three. And I'll take a few moments to talk about each one of them and leave you with some thoughts, and then we can engage in interactions. And I would love to hear some of your questions after this. The first one is cultivate your competence. The profession of engineering stands on the shoulder of competence. If it is not competence, then we as professionals have nothing to display. We are craftsmen, and our craftsmanship is based on our competence. And our competence is interesting because it grows with time. It's not that we learn something and we keep practicing it over and over. We accumulate new competence or enhanced competence. But then competence is also a very misplaced, a very overutilized, abused word. We need to dig deep and understand what competence is. If you have to take charge of cultivating your competence, we better know what competence is. And if I put it in an engineering way, right? I see competence as a function of three variables. There is skill, of course. There is capability, and the third one is experience. And competence doesn't get built unless and until we amalgamate these three things in absolutely the right proportion. Um, Very frequently, I have seen many of my young colleagues get so disillusioned by assuming that competence is just skill. And I was kind of smiling when Sukriti started off her introduction with that particular thing. And we did not prepare it, by the way. Skill is important. Skill is tools. We need to be intimately familiar with the tools that we use to craft. And we will get familiar. It's implicit that we will familiarize with the tools. We'll have to keep ourselves abreast with the tools. But the other two are possibly more important because they frequently get overlooked. Um, so before I go to capability and experience, let me talk a bit more about skill, right? Uh, so a couple of weeks back, I was taking a stock of our engineering practice, and I was taking a stock of how many discrete skills do we practice on as a community. And I was surprised to see 1630 odd discrete skills that my community practices their craft on. Now, it is, and this is just about our community. And I'm not, 1630 odd is not a comprehensive list of skills. I'm sure that would span into thousands. The challenge is that if we have to build our skills, how do we even start? How do we even ambition to get our hands around 1630 of them? And and it keeps changing every day. And this is where we need an atlas. We need to define, we need to exist in an environment which can clearly articulate what is the skill that we need as engineers. And that relates to the fact that what are we engineering on? So for me, I I am entrusted with building and nurturing a community of digital engineers, and digital for me is cloud native, right? So we are cloud native engineers. So we build our craft on cloud native platforms. And that is what engineering means for me. That's the backbone of the definition of engineering. And that leads me and that helps me to define my skill model, my skill atlas. And what you see here is the way uh, we look at skill. And I'm not saying that this is the only way of looking at skill, but this is a very important step in us trying to chart our skill competence. And this is also what gives my definition of full stack for my community. What you see here is a stack, right? A stack is well defined, well bounded, and you can open it up into a two-dimensional atlas that you see on the right. And that's the skill landscape on which our competence and experience grows in span and depth as we, build our experience. Now, unless we have that atlas, we would forever be running after you know the bright lights in the sky, and it's going to lead us nowhere, because ultimately we have to distill our experience and learn how to learn fast, and that's what conquering the skill landscape is all about. Now, when it comes to capability simply put is inherent ability. It's what we are it's what germinates our passion, right? um, in my early days of my career, I was absolutely fascinated dimensional model to be able to turn it around. It was an absolutely amazing experience. I wanted to spend my a major part of my career in a graphics company. I never got selected in a graphics company, by the way. Uh, I'm not that I'm complaining, but what I'm trying to say is we have our areas of passion. I have mine, you have yours, everybody has his or hers. And that is important for us to realize. It is very important for us to build a foundation on what we find very interesting. Some of us find absolutely fascination in dealing with algorithms. Some of us absolutely are fascinated with information exchange. Some of us are fascinated with AI, deep learning, and cognitive sciences. Build your career, respect that, do not go against the grain, and trust me, your abilities and your capabilities will shift with time. They are not carved in stone. What you are passionate about today will not be the same as you will experience 5 years down the line. But if you are passionate about something, that is the path of the least resistance, and you should follow that. And that is what will make it exciting for you. The third one is about experience. And experience for engineers is very important. Experience for engineer is what differentiates a good engineer from a great engineer. Um, and specifically of diversity of experience. What makes us great engineers is how many engineering problems have we encountered in our career? How many different types of paradigms have we seen? Today, if I look back, I feel empowered by the amount of change I have seen. Um, and I'm able to see that while they were changes, when I was standing in the midst of it, all of them had the same undercurrent. The concepts never changed across these 25 years. And when I talk to some of my seniors who have spent 30, 35 years in the industry, uh, they acknowledge the statement. They say that what happened during the time of the card punching machines is not very different than what we are doing conceptually in any form of computing. But what matters is how many different things have we experienced with. How does it make it better? How does it make us better? It makes us better because it enables us to deal with the unknown in a much better way by having dealt with many such cases in the past, uh, or similar cases in the past. So when we look at competence, um, we should focus on skill, capability, and experience together, rather than being bedazzled by just skills alone. The second The second thought that I would leave you with is it is your career. It is absolutely your career, and you are in charge. You should be in charge. Don't get into a state where you are swayed by where the market turns. Don't chase the waves. Um, some of you students who are yet to start your professional journey, it's too early for you to know where you want to be, at the end of your career. For some of my tenured colleagues, we are possibly coming to a state where we have some degree of clarity on where we want to be. But it is very important for you to be in control of how you navigate, and you have to experience. You have to. It's not that all of us will retire as software engineers. It's not that all of us would want to retire as software engineers. There is no need to be, right? Um, it is also a fact that to become a better software engineer, we have to be a good designer. We have to experience what is architecture. If we have to be a master engineer, we have to know how project management works. And these are not theoretical concepts. We have to experience them. So if you are an engineer, you have to chart your career in a way where you get this diversity of career experience. The third point that I would want to leave you with is choose the culture. Um, when I talked about the importance of a mentor, mentoring did not exist as a magical spark, right? The chemistry is a magical spark because it takes time to find the right mentor. But things like mentoring, they flourish on a culture. And culture goes beyond free coffees, bean bags, and black t-shirts. Culture is very different. Culture is emotional, but culture has to flourish. Culture has to stand on the pedestal of structure. So, and you have to choose a place of belonging which reflects your values, which instills a sense of belonging, which commits to provide you transparency and objectivity, which enables you to follow your aspirations. If you have to chart your career, it's not intended that you need to switch your company. You need to switch your environment. Choose an environment which can give you the diversity of experience that you need, right? That is much more useful and fruitful because you would be building your competence within one ecosystem. um, is it based on coaching and mentoring? And look for structure. Look for how coaching and mentoring is enabled in an environment rather than taking it at hearsay. These are important things. You cannot afford to assume by hearing that it exists. You have to choose the right culture. And last but not the least is, does it encourage diversity of thought? Is it um, is it very command and control? Is it coaching and nurturing? Because coaching and nurturing does promote diversity of thought, which is what instills a sense of belonging, right? You feel a degree of ownership, you feel a degree of belongingness. And and I believe these are the only three things that I would leave you with as a distill of my experience in terms of what it takes uh, to follow your career and let your career follow you passionately. And with that, I will stop and I will hand it back to you, Sukriti, and I will look forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. And this is, whatever you shared is really, really interesting. So, to start with, I would, look at it.
Uh, we are always on the lookout for talent. So it's not that we were not hiring and we are hiring now. Our doors are always open. My community is always open for engineers who want to follow their passion. And instead of trying to uh, make it into a sales pitch, I would leave the question with a statement that come and experience us. That's all I would say.
Wonderful. So now that the forum is open for the questions, I'll start with Devi Prasad's question, Sandeep. And the question is that how to excel in software field who has just stepped out from an engineering college?
Okay, so I'm sorry I did not get the name, Sukriti. What was the name?
It's Devi Prasad.
Devi Prasad. So, hi, Devi Prasad. And a very interesting question, but a very common question that I hear from fresh grads. Um, and it always takes me back to the glory days that I had when I started my career. And looking back, Devi Prasad, I think the next 5 years, 10 years for you uh, is going to be absolutely golden. So cherish the next lap. Um, how to excel? I think the only thought that I will leave you with, Devi Prasad, is focus on building your competence. That is what is going to help you in the the vast plane of your career. But the first 5 years, focus on honing your skills. Focus on um, bolstering yourself with you know with competence, with skill, experience, and figure out where your capabilities lie.
The next question is from Asha. She asks, how should we keep ourselves updated in terms of technology?
So, Asha, remember I told you that I have had this experience many a times that every time I step out of an engagement, it feels like I have stepped into the future. I have stepped into the new world. It takes me some time to realize where am I, right? We need to minimize that. We need to minimize that by, of course, learning how to learn fast, but also keeping our peripheral vision open, Asha. The world is changing. We need to keep track of the change. So, for example, it's very important to understand it in a structured manner. It all starts with paradigms, right? Changes happen on top of paradigms. Paradigms are like tides, and technology changes are like waves. If you are a visual person and want to visualize it that way, we are currently in the paradigm of cloud engineering, and there is a huge momentum. It's almost become a de facto standard that when we talk of engineering, we talk of engineering on the cloud. We need to keep track of the um, the paradigm that we are dealing with, and we also want to keep our eyes on the horizon, that what's the next paradigm that's going to hit us. And we need to continue keeping track. What are the technologies that are flourishing? What are the technologies that are horizon? What is it that is being experimented with? What is it that is getting touted in developers conferences? And if you mix it with your ability of if you have learned how to learn fast, then it becomes very, very easy for you to become or derive a very strong point of view on the topic. And I'll give you an example, Asha. Say, for example, when um, I'm going to relate to a recent change, right? And I'm going to talk about the surprise that Angular threw at us when it suddenly migrated to Angular 2.0. And when people looked at 2.0, it was completely different than 1.0, right? But if you look at it, there were certain design constructs, there were certain architectural principles that change. And if you look at this change from a semantic perspective, it is absolutely disorienting. It is very frustrating. But if you understand that this change happened at an architectural layer by rewiring these concepts and introducing these architectural tenets, then you are in a position to derive and extrapolate what might have been the change in Angular 2.0. And that is how, Asha, I would suggest that we reorient ourselves to looking at how we stay updated on a transformed skill base.
Okay, the next one is from Indrajit Kumar. And he asks that how can we choose the new skill to develop? What analysis we should do?
So I'm going to give a slightly watered down response to this, Indrajit, right? Um, I would say that it really doesn't matter which skill you are dabbling with right now. It can be PHP, it can be JavaScript, it can be Ruby on Rails. Uh, because anything that you pick up, what you definitely don't want to do is keep juggling with multiple skills at the same time, fearing that if I don't juggle all of them together, I might miss out. The world is changing fast enough for us to keep all the balls in the air. So don't even attempt doing that, Indrajit, right? What I would say is whichever skills you are working on, and in many of the cases, Indrajit, the choice of skills that we work on is dictated by the kind of problem that we are solving, the kind of business that we are trying to solution for, right? The kind of environment that we are called upon to build our craft on. But irrespective, focus on understanding the concepts. Focus on understanding what underpins the skill. If you do that, Indrajit, the next skill that you pick up, you would be able to master it in 1/10 the time. And I'll leave you with that thought, Indrajit.
Okay. Pankaj asks that his question is, how should one find a mentor?
Um, so that's a very good question, Pankaj. um, that's a really good question. Okay, so finding a mentor is not difficult. Finding the right mentor is difficult, right? And mentorship is a very it's a very nurturing, it's a very deeply emotional bond, right? You open up your conduit of knowledge, you open up to suggestions to another person, and not only is the conduit extremely powerful, but it is very influencing in itself, right? And I have seen many mentoring relationships fall apart because the conduit was possibly not leveraged in the right way. The responsibility falls on the mentee and the mentor both. Now, finding finding the right mentor becomes easier if you exist in a culture which structurally promotes mentoring, which structurally lays the foundation of building organizations on the culture of coaching and nurturing rather than command and control. Finding command and control environment is almost impossibility, right? But if you choose an environment which is deeply structurally rooted in its promise of coaching and nurturing, you will find mentors because then it's a structural concept. And these environments are very mature. And mentoring is a very prolonged exercise. It's not exchange over a discussion. It's not a 15 minutes talk. It takes years to build the trust for the relationship to mature. I have been associated with my mentor for the last 20 years, right? And it's still a energizing and invigorating experience. One for you. But the important thing is to choose the culture which enables mentoring to happen.
Wonderfully said, Sandeep. I should agree to that. Moving on to the next one. Although this is a little confusing for us, I'll just read it out. Aman Chaudhary is the person who asks that I'm pursuing the final year degree of engineering. How can I get a job or any internship at Cognizant? I am interested in the machine learning domain.
Okay. So Indrajit, it's very simple. I think we have you can apply for internship through our site, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Indrajit, just drop me a note, and we will take it forward.
Okay, I will take up a student question here, Sandeep. She's Tanishri, and she says, I'm a second year student.
So these are two very different things. Uh, so being a good software engineer and getting placed in an organization are both important constructs, but both are different. Now, if you want to be a good software engineer, this is the right time. This is absolutely the right time for you to focus on concepts. So I don't know if these legendary books are still being taught, but if you can catch hold of Morris Back about Unix operating system fundamentals, it will lay down solid foundation for you to conquer the world of software engineering. Pick up compilers, read through it. You will understand. You will be ready to embrace every language that is thrown at you at any point in time. Um, and whatever I talked about in the last couple of minutes is what is going to make you a good software engineer. When it comes to getting placement, there are two things. The first thing is be familiar with what the world is gyrating to right now, what the crafts are being built upon. And cloud is of course there, right? It's omnipresent around us. So if you have not, please experience cloud. It's wonderful. You are going to fall in love with it. Um, but the other thing is that I don't think you will have a dearth of opportunities for getting placed. That is the least of my worries. My worries, my not my worry, but my thought would be that choose the right place for yourself. That is more important than trying to get placed in an organization.
Okay, moving on to the next one, we have one from Sonal Pathak. Sir, how should we select a domain for ourselves?
uh, it's a very good question. I think very good question. uh, I have spent um, majority of my career in banking and financial services, and it's a wonderfully enriching spiral, right? I did not choose the word vicious because it's absolutely not vicious. It's a wonderfully enriching spiral. But once you start getting deeper and deeper into a domain, uh, you start becoming entrenched. That's the nature of domain, right? And it's a good thing that builds on your experience, that makes you more and more formidable. I covered a large part of my professional trajectory from being a developer and an architect to a chief technology officer for the BFS part of our organization. Um, Now, in many cases, um, we don't get to choose the domain. We essentially experience many domains, and you pick up the one that you like. The second thing is, in my tenure, I have experienced, apart from BFS, quite a few other domains. I have experienced the domain of edutech. I have experienced the domain of manufacturing and logistics. I have experienced healthcare. I have experienced telecom. And each of these domains are absolutely wonderful in themselves. So, even having spent 15 years in banking and financial services, I would not say that banking and financial services is the best of them all, which means that choose any domain you want. Choose healthcare, life sciences, choose telecom, choose space science. You will find each one of them equally fascinating. So do not worry too much on that front.
Okay, another one is from Shweta. How do you stick with your career path?
Ah, so, so Shraddha, I think if I um, if I try to answer it truthfully, right, the only reason you will stick to your career path is because of some very rational reasons. One, and the least one of them, is that you don't know anything else to do. This is the only thing that you have learned to do, so you have to stick to it. But for us engineers, that doesn't apply, because for us the domain of competence is it's very wide. We can pretty much pick up what we want to do and do it, right? That's what engineers are. So then the question becomes for us, Shraddha, is why do we want to stick to it? And we want to stick to it only if we find it gratifying, we find it enjoyable, it keeps stoking our passion for years and years together. And if you are in a state where you are able to find gratification from your profession, it is implicit that you will never ever want to leave it. You would only want to enrich, diversify, and make it better and better.
Okay, the next one is from Divya. What are the opportunities for web development role in Cognizant?
So, so Divya, uh, we practice engineering on a very varied and diverse platform, right? Now, we look at engineering from multiple angles. We have our definition of full stack engineering. We have, and for us, a full stack engineering is being capable to engineer independently, autonomously on a predefined skill landscape end to end, right? So that's the way we look at engineering. And a part of full stack engineering is also web development, because that's a part of the engineering stack, right? But we also have our different parts of our engineering organization dealing with web development, user interface, graphics in a dedicated manner. And if you relate back to when I talked about um, understanding and building upon your capabilities, if you think you want to explore more on pure web development, we have digital experience, which is a phenomenal place for you to experience that. If you want to experience web development along with a wider skill universe, then of course we have the full stack engineering playground for you.
A fresher should choose right skills for their career that helps in hiring process.
um, so this is pretty much the same question that a few minutes earlier that that wonderful lady asked about how should I become a good software engineer and what should I do to get placed in an organization, right? Um, I would say that focus on your concepts, not on your skills. And I'm going to reiterate this like a parrot because I very strongly believe in it. If your concepts are strong, skills are not a problem. You can pick up a book and learn a skill and learn how to talk in it. You can be productive in any skill thrown at you within a week, right? I don't think you should worry about mastering skills. I think you should worry about understanding the core tenets, the foundation, the concepts of what these skills are built on. And second, be familiar with the current set of technologies that are in play, that the world is resonating towards. And both things put together is more than enough for you um, to absolutely make a mark and flourish.
Okay, the next one is from Ruchi Agrawal. For experienced people who have completed 10 to 11 years in the industry and haven't got a chance to work on variety of environments, to have more exposure of different processes, what is the next step to proceed?
So, so Ruchi, this is this is slightly saddening, right? Because if it's 10 and 11 years, more than 10 years, 1 decade in this industry, and diversity of experience is low, uh, that person needs to break out of it. That person needs to experience diversity, and the more how do I call it, isolated we remain from diversity of experience, the difficult it becomes for us to get back into it. So diversity looks frightening if we want to, because we tend to get into our comfort zone. But I think it's time to break free. It's time to experience. It's time to jump into an environment and hungrily gather the diversity of experience.
Okay, next one I will take from Anjali Sharma. She's saying that what to do if we feel stagnant and stuck in our career?
um, Talk to your manager. That's the first thing that you should do. You should have a um, I have and truth be told, this is a very common problem. I have seen many of them, but most of them can be easily solved if you have a very open discussion with your home manager in your organization, right? I have seen more cases being solved in a very productive manner by talking it out, rather than assuming that nothing will happen. If that doesn't work, as I said, the world of IT um, is very open. The effort versus the resources that it needs for you to build your competence is absolutely disproportionately low. Uh, have a laptop of your own. It doesn't take much. Practice skills on your own. Don't be limited by the technology, the skill experience that your professional career is providing you. There is no need for you to get limited to that, right? If it still doesn't, if you still don't get an opportunity to do that in your current trajectory in your career, try to break free. Try to choose a culture which resonates to what you want.
Okay. A lot of people are asking about stagnant career. Thank God you've answered this one, Sandeep. Okay. Gaurav asks, since you've contributed so much to open source, can you give some practical tips on how to get started and contribute to open source?
Yes. Um, I love that question. Thank you so much for asking. Um, the first tip is create a GitHub account. that's the easiest one, uh, but that is important. I think most of the time we get held back because we don't have a GitHub account, right? Create it. Second thing is I have seen many of us engineers who are enthused for open source development try to jump into contributing to something which is well established, you know uh, and we believe that that is what open source is, that unless and until my commit gets pulled into the main trunk of Docker, what have I done? It's not worth mentioning. uh, that's not true. That's not true. Uh, pick up a project that you are interested in. Pick up a project that you would want to experiment on. The project can be something of value to yourself, something that you want to experiment with, something that you just want to play around with, right? The third thing is make it a practice to check it into GitHub. All you have to do is git init bear, git commit, git push, and you are done, right? It's there in GitHub. If you do these three things, you fall into this honeypot of self-amplifying vortex, right? So what happens is then you get to see your GitHub commits in a dashboard, and that is absolutely intoxicating. Uh, this year, I think last in 2020, I believe, end of 2020, uh, GitHub started a service called Skyline, GitHub Skyline. I'm not sure if you have seen, but it can create a 3D model out of your GitHub commit space, and you can take a 3D print out of it and use it as a paperweight or use it as a memento in your on your desk, right? uh, so to summarize, start off, and you will get entrenched pleasurably, like a bee in a honeypot.
Okay, Ajit asks, do you really believe reading programming books is very important nowadays? If so, any suggestions?
uh, So I hate to use this phrase yes and no because it sounds so political in nature, right? Um, reading books is you. If I'm trying to learn something new, because it gives you a psychological feeling of being anchored to a place, and by the virtue of holding a book, you feel that you have that thing in control, right? But this is the old me speaking, because I come from a time when books were the primary source of knowledge. the world has changed. Nowadays, I buy only select books. I still buy books. So to your question, right? If you are starting off on a brand new language, let us say if today I have to pick up TypeScript, right? Uh, I would possibly be encouraged to buy a book. It gives you a jump start. It gives you a jump start. But trust me, the book very soon falls short of answering all your questions, right? And then you should leave the book when that state comes, because then you are ready. Then you have questions beyond what the book has answered, and then you should take embrace the knowledge base that the internet provides. Learn, explore, right? Um, it is also very psychological in nature. Some of us feel very comforted with books. Some of us don't need books. I have had many of my colleagues who could just open up a page, read through it, and start writing code, right? So it's very dependent upon you. Neither is the right answer, yes or no. So choose the way you feel more comfortable.
Okay, we have an interesting question from Abhishek Desai, Sandeep. He's saying that is it good to learn one thing at a time, or learn everything in one go? Doing multitasking. What would you suggest?
So indeed, it's a very interesting question. When you are starting to learn, and I'm talking about our college days, right? Um, we have very few courseware. We have possibly 3 or 4 computer science courses which go in parallel. We started off with one programming language, very sequential, right? Um, as we grow, as we increase our competence, it increases our ability to learn multiple things parallelly, right? And that is why you would see that in your 4th year you have 5 different computer courses, whereas you started with one in your 1st year, right? And this spanning continues to evolve with your career, and it happens for a reason, right? It happens for a reason because as you start embracing more and more skills, your conceptual base starts getting hardened and more enriched, and concepts don't change. So at a certain point in time, you can pick up 5 programming languages and work on 5 of them together. And it's not a hypothetical statement. It's a very You have to work with application programming languages, data languages, style sheets, network queries, right? You have to at least work with 5 different languages at the same time. So it is a natural skill that will come. What you should not do is start dabbling with multiple things without focusing or having a good conceptual base. Because if you do that, you will essentially get burnt out, because everything would seem different and your bandwidth would just vanish, right? So don't do that.
Okay, the next one is from Ravi. How to balance working and learning after being landed on many technologies to work and learn?
Right. So working and learning has to go hand in hand. I mean, I don't think the learning stops when you work. um, it is just that learning progresses in a different dimension. See, when we are in engagements build our skill depth. So our learning continues, but it takes the Z axis. When we come out of engagements, or outside our engagements, we try to move forward and keep abreast. So that's the first reaction that I have, that learning doesn't stop. Second part is, when you are in engagements, we have to realize that we work on a snapshot of skills when we work on engagements, because in engagements the skill set doesn't change for months together, right? If it's Angular project, it's an Angular project till it ends. You would never get to experience React, right? Possibly not. uh, what becomes very important is that you take out some time, your personal time, right, to experience things outside the frozen snapshot that you're currently working on. That is going to be extremely important for you to come out of the engagement and familiarize or walk into a universe which you don't feel alien, right? Otherwise, like me, like I have felt many times that every time I came out of an engagement, I could not recognize, which world I am on. Right? So don't fall into that trap.
Okay. A lot of internship and job opportunities question machine
Audience. Um, I have a public presence on LinkedIn. I have a public presence on GitHub, and I would love to stay connected. Uh, Ping me on LinkedIn. Follow me on GitHub. Give me your ID. I will follow you on GitHub. Right. Um, if we stay connected, then I would be very happy to answer any questions that you have offline. So I don't think this 1 hour limits our ability to interact with each other.
That's right, Sandeep, and I'm sure that we have so many questions coming in, and we have an overwhelming response from the audience. Also, they want to know so much about it. I think that's the best way that they connect with you and get their queries sorted. Apologies to people whose query we were not able to take, but definitely you can get in touch with Sandeep on various platforms, LinkedIn, GitHub, wherever he's just mentioned, and then I think he'll be able to help you in the best possible way. Sandeep, we're also in time. It's 4:01. Thank you so much for being here. It was an absolute delight to have you for the session. Thank you everyone for joining the session. The session has been recorded and will soon be available on TechGeek's webinar page. Thank you everyone. Stay safe. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day ahead.